and community in the context of unschooling. You want to tell us a little bit about the concept behind that one or the details behind that one?
Yeah, really, the thought behind it is this year, 2020, we've had a lot of, I guess if you want to call them realizations, and people coming to terms with some things and recognizing other things. So I thought that it would be interesting to have the discussion about race and community through the context of unschooling, which in and of itself, unschooling, the idea being so kind of counterculture right now, and seeing how as Black people or people of color, Indigenous people, how we fit and where we fit and how we fit, and just developing on that idea and seeing where that goes.
Yeah. And I know that's something that a lot of us, we don't even need to have like formalized time and space designated to discuss it, because it's going to come up for us because race and culture are intertwined.
Right.
And so when we talk about community, so much of community is about shared culture and meaning, creating like a culture for yourselves together. And so when you have things like people who don't see race or color and then others who do, but everybody wants to be in community because we have the shared idea of unschooling. What does that look like? That's so much what we talk about. And we want to be able to do that in more detailed ways, in ways that, are, as Kris said, right now, people are having a lot of realizations, and not just white people, but also lots of BIPOC folks are having certain realizations as well. And we're hoping that the conversation around race and community and unschooling will be in support of BIPOC folks having certain realizations and what it means to move from that realization into action to actually create community.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And the context of unschooling for me is the really important bit, because we get to kind of dissect and de-school from a lot of things and kind of reapproach old things that we may have considered before from a new lens and kind of look at it that way. So that's something I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, same here. So another one, allies versus co-opters, or all lives matter till looting starts, or I meant well. We don't know what we're going to call it yet, but it's somewhere in that vein. And as we were talking about it a little bit in detail, that one is really about discerning, about the idea that when we talk about people who identify as allies, whether we're talking about in the context of white people or we're talking about the context of adults for children, it can go, a few different ways.
Right.
What is the difference? Are we discerning between the moments when it's actually not support or amplification, but they're just leveraging shit? I've had conversations with brands who've reached out to me since all these realizations that Black lives actually do matter. And what they're saying is, oh, we want you to take over our Instagram so that your voice can be amplified to our audience. What? And you sell a product or service? How does that benefit me? Like, is that amplifying, or is that you leveraging so it can be like, oh, look at me having a relationship with a Black person?
Yeah, definitely. That's right there along the lines. And it also happens on smaller scales, like person to person. We don't actually know coming into a thing how we're going to be. We want to show support. We want to be there for people. But sometimes we make it about ourselves. Unintentionally sometimes, but sometimes very purposefully, as to kind of take what's going on with somebody else and run with it. So it's a good conversation to have.
Yes.
How far is too far? How involved is too involved? Should you mind your place? Should you ask someone, how much is that?
Right. What does labor look like when it's like, should you come to the table with ideas, or should you just come with the space and offer? Like, what does that look like? So this is one of those opportunities where somebody could mess around and get educated, because we're having the conversation for ourselves. But if you're really paying attention, you're going to learn some things too.
Right.
Because I've been talking to some of these brands like, yo, here's why that's a problem, and here's what you need to do differently. But on this podcast, I'm talking to Black folks, and I'm also talking to non-Black, Indigenous people and people of color about, on your end, what does discerning look like to make sure that brands aren't tokenizing you and calling that shit amplification when it's just leveraging on their end, and not leveraging that's equitable.